Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to talk about creating our first API. In all our earlier videos, we were saying theoretically what API is, what are the key concepts, and how to create a sample project, and what all testing tools we need to create the API. But from this video, we will mostly focus on writing code. So this will be the first video wherein we will write some code and understand how to create our APIs and also the concepts involved while we are creating that APIs. So this is the sample project. I've created my first API. This is just the boilerplate code that we have. I just enabled Swagger on this uh, so that I can test it. And how to enable the Swagger we have seen in the earlier video. So if you want to see how to enable the Swagger, just watch my earlier videos. And now in this video specifically, we will talk about creating our get endpoint, right? For that, first let's delete for the focused controller which got created when we created the project. Let's delete this controller. Let's add our own controller, which is employee controller. So I just said add controller. This is a API. So I'll go to API, I'll create a empty controller, I'll click on add. So I'll go to API controller empty. I will say employee controller. I'll click on add. Even before we start creating our get endpoint, let's understand what controller is and what action method is. Okay, so this controller, as we have seen earlier, in this we write all our business logics into the action method. So whenever a request comes in, it is this place that gets executed and return back the response. And we also write our business logic here. And if you see, this controller is nothing but a class that inherits from the controller base, and there are two important attributes that we will have to talk about while talking about the controller, API controller. So those two are API controller and route. So what is this API controller attribute? So this gives in the very key characteristics for an API controller. And what important features this attribute has is it has got a lot of features, but the important features that we have to talk about is uh, model binding, and model validation, and attribute routing enabling. So these are the three important features that we have to talk about when we talk about API controller attribute. Now, what is model binding? Now, whenever we are writing our action methods, like in this video, we are going to write our get action method, which is a get endpoint. If suppose if we want to send some data into our one of my action method, in our subsequent videos we will see like creating post deletes and post endpoint delete and endpoint and all those. We will pass in some data into that APIs. So how to bind the data from the request to the corresponding action method, this API controller would take care of, which is called model binding, right? And it also does what is called as model validation. Now, if my endpoint or action method is expecting some data in the request, but I am sending an incorrect data, right? Which will throw an error to the client saying it's a bad request, which is called a model validation, right? That is also taken care by the API controller attribute. And the other one important feature is routing, which is attribute routing. If you see this attribute route, this is called attribute routing. You give in the route here, so that's how the URL that you give in your browser gets redirected to the appropriate controller and appropriate action method that sits inside this controller. So yeah, that's about the theory. Now let's go and get started with our first action method, which is the get, right? Let's write our first method get, which is the written type of an action method. So action methods, in our action methods we write all our important logic. The actual logic I would say would go into my action method, right? So this is my first action method, which is HTTP GET. Now I'll work on the static data in this uh, first few videos. So the static data, let me copy paste from here. Let me put it here. In our later videos, we would definitely go ahead and uh, move this static data or deal with the static data from the DB. We will see that in our later videos, but for now it's a static data. Let me define my employee model. So I'll have to create an employee model. Let me create a model folder for you. Add new folder. Let's name it models folder. In the interest of time, let's copy paste the employee model as well. Add class. Let me make it employee class, and let's copy the code. So this is my employee class. Let me use this, right? So my get is this action methods. I will have to make it HTTP get, right? So this is an action method. It can return various return types. It can be iAction result, it can be a void, it can be a class, it can be a primitive types like int and all those. It can be iAction result. It can be task of iAction result if you are dealing with async action methods. The advantage of using iAction result is, you can return status codes along with it. So that's the advantage of using iAction result. And to make it tightly coupled, you can also use generic types on top of this. But in this course, we will see using iAction result to return the response, and we will return proper status codes accordingly. Okay. And for this, let's just do one thing. Let's just return the data, whatever is there, which is employees. Okay. Now, if I say OK of employees, it means that the request is successful, and I will be returning all the list of employees back to the user. Okay. um, Return. Okay, this is the code. Now let's quickly execute it and see what is the response that we are getting. It's executing. So if I try to execute it, you see I got the response. That's about get. Just to give a quick recap of what we have seen is we have created an employee controller. We have created one action method. So controllers are nothing but whatever business logic that we write in, all the core logic goes into the controller, and the action methods are the place we write that business logic into. And the controller is nothing but a class. It is decorated with two important attributes, API controller and routes. All the core features for the controller is given by this API controller, like model binding, model validation, and attribute routing. And the attribute routing is enabled with this route attribute. Okay, and in this we are going to deal with the static data. So that's the reason I created an employee static data. I created an employee model with all these properties, and later I created an action method. So see, if you see this business logic is going in here, I'm returning iAction result. The advantage of using iAction result is I can return status codes back to the uh, user or the client, so that they can handle the downstream process on their end. And I have decorated it with one attribute, which is HTTP get, right, which primarily tells that it's a get call, get API call, that returns the data back to us, right? So yes, we have seen how to create our first API, which is a get API. In our subsequent videos, we will talk about the other types of action methods or HTTP verbs. In this, we just saw get. We will see other verbs in our next videos. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe.